Ever since the Nintendo Switch launched all the way back in 2017, rumors of a Switch Pro leaked every 30 minutes or so, but now Nintendo's finally coming out with an upgraded model called the OLED. But since it's only got minor revisions and no extra power, a lot of people are feeling a little underwhelmed to say the least. And Nintendo never did promise anything, so it is a little weird that some people are getting so worked up over them not catering to rumors, but even so, a lot of people still feel like the Switch is long overdue for a graphical upgrade. But even though I'd love to have a Switch with an ass hair more juice, the fact is, I don't think we really need one right now. In fact, I think it'd be better if we waited a little while longer for it. So sit back in your landlord's imported lawn chair and allow me, YouTube's oldest full-grown boy, Cameron all one word, to tell you why we never really needed a Switch Pro in the first place, even though I kinda did want one. Alright, so I know that the 3DS saw a graphical upgrade with the new 3DS at the same point in its life cycle that the Switch is in during the OLED reveal, but even though I personally liked the new 3DS, I can't really say that it was ever really necessary in the long run. I mean, it was nice for games to boot up a little quicker and for the 3D that no one ever used to be a little more convenient, but would the console have really died without a handful of exclusives that you can only play on the newer model? The entire appeal of developing games for the 3DS is that there was a big install base of people who had the base model, so why make a game that 80 to 90% of them couldn't even play? So even though I personally would have loved to have had a more powerful Switch Pro, I don't really blame Nintendo for not making one when the Switch is still doing really well and none of the upcoming games really need the extra horsepower. It is funny that they finally added a LAN adapter when the Dreamcast had one all the way back in 1999, and it blows my mind that the Switch doesn't have folders or themes, but I just kinda disagree with people who say that the Switch needs more power. Besides, let's not forget about that whole chip shortage fiasco that's going on either. I know the base Switch is still being affected by the chip shortage to some degree, but since over 80 million people already have one, they're not being scalped out the ass like the PS5 and Series X are. However, if there were to be a new upgraded Switch Pro in 2021, then you could bet that nobody who actually wants to play it would be able to get a hold of one. And I guess the OLED model can be scalped too, but I don't think nearly as many people are gonna pounce on this quite like they would with a Switch Pro. I mean, I know I'm not getting one, and judging by the polarizing reaction, I don't think enough people are gonna want it to where it'll be worth it for scalpers to buy all the stock up. I'm sure some of them are gonna do it, but I just think they're gonna get burned is all. I'm not saying that I think Nintendo consciously held back on a graphical upgrade to deter scalpers. I'm sure the OLED was what they had planned all along, but during a chip shortage, I think the last thing we really want's a hardware upgrade that most of us probably won't be able to get a hold of. If I didn't already have a Switch and plan to get one, then I'd probably opt for the OLED model, but even though I'm sure some Switch owners will still probably upgrade for the hell of it, I think the idea from Nintendo is probably just to phase the older models out and get away with charging a little more for the Switch. I mean, they didn't keep the original 3DS models around till the very end, so I doubt they're gonna keep the original Switch around for too long either, even with the OLED model not having any actual graphical upgrades. I'm sure I'll probably be called a Nintendo fan man for saying this, but when I look at 2021's lineup, I can't exactly say that the Switch is starving for content with so many notable games on the way. Sure, it'd have been nice to get some third-party multiplats that the current Switch can't handle, but even with an upgrade, a Switch Pro still wouldn't be comparable to the PS5 or Series X in 2021, so really, all a Switch Pro would have gotten at this point are multiplats that have already been out for a while on other consoles, like the Resident Evil 2 remake and stuff like that. You know, kinda like most of the third-party games that are coming to the base Switch model right now anyway. Yeah, I know the multiplats on the Switch are older than they would be with an upgrade, but, none of us have played all of these multiplats, and it is portable, so, I can understand why a lot of these games end up selling pretty well. Not saying I don't want more third-party games on the Switch, I just think things are going pretty well right now. Not perfect, but still pretty good. And I think it's better to appreciate what we have, rather than to fiend over what we don't, especially when what we don't have isn't something we really need in the first place, even though it would be pretty nice. Again, I'm probably not gonna get the OLED model, so I get being unimpressed by the reveal. I just don't think it's worth losing any energy over, especially when the Switch's current schedule is looking pretty decent. Honestly, if an upgraded console has exclusive games like the new 3DS and Game Boy Color did, then to me, that makes it a straight-up successor rather than just an upgrade, even if you call it the same thing. And I don't know, even though I would have bought a Switch Pro, I still think it'd kinda be a middle finger to the early adopters if it had exclusives that they couldn't play, even if it was only a handful of them. And yeah, I know the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X were kind of pointless without exclusives, but that's kind of my point. A Switch Pro would either be pointless or rude, so even though I would have bought one, I still don't think it would have been necessary. I mean, Nintendo consoles that aren't the Wii U usually last about 5 or 6 years, and the Switch is about to turn 5 right now, so with the sales as good as they are, why not just wait another year or two and go all out rather than get an upgrade that still won't even compare to the PS5 and Series X anyway? Personally, as much as I'd like an upgrade, I think the Switch's sales could probably stay strong for another 2 to 3 years as long as Nintendo keeps some good games coming. After all, when people thought the original Game Boy was dead and obsolete, all it took were a pair of Pokemon games to bring the thing back to life for a few more years. And with Nintendo not dividing their software up between two platforms anymore like they used to, then anything they make for the Switch is gonna end up moving hardware, cause people will buy first-party Nintendo games no matter what they're on. Sure, they didn't with the Wii U, but that's because the same games were already on the 3DS for less money with portability, and the quality was pretty close between both platforms. But with the Switch being the only place to get Nintendo games, and the only place to get quality portable games, I don't think the outdated graphics are going to prevent anyone from skipping something like a Mario Odyssey 2. So as long as Nintendo's not slacking, I don't see why the base Switch couldn't keep trucking along for at least a few more years, even without the big third-party games that people can get on the PS5 and Series X. Again, I'm not saying the Switch wouldn't be better if it had more power, but with the PS5 and Series X still being new, a Switch Pro would have still been obsolete anyway. So you know what, why not just wait for a full successor to come out closer to the middle of Sony and Microsoft's life cycles to close the gap as much as possible like the original Switch did? Especially during a chip shortage, for frig's sake. So instead of fiending for slightly more power, I think we should just sit back and enjoy the base Switch for what it's worth.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
But anyway, that's all for today though, so let me know whether or not you're getting a Switch OLED in the comments below, and if you liked this video then you should check out this full-length movie I made with Bruce Willis called RoboCop 2. If you'll excuse me though, I gotta go let my stepdad back in before he freezes to death. Later.
So I want to say thank you to your loyalty, thank you for your support.